Welcome back to the What You More podcast. I'm your host, Quentin Harris. You're dialed in for episode 171. And hey, did we hit some nerves with that last podcast? I think we did. So here's one thing I've learned from the feedback on that. You know, if you're a homeowner, you're not asking for a crash. You're not wanting a crash, but it's the buyer that hasn't bought the home yet. That's what I'm starting to see. People that haven't purchased their home yet, they are the ones that want to see the shift dynamic. And that's going to be the bulk of our episode here at 171 as we tackle the reactions to the comments from the previous episode because they were so good, right? So we're going to dive right into that. And here we go. So last episode, I talked about 17 trillion reasons why 2024 housing market is not like 2008. Again, 2008, vast differences. You're dancing with a ghost if that's what you think is going to happen here, but not the case. So admittedly, let's talk about a couple things here. So what I really liked about these comments were the polarizing takes from both sides, right? You have a lot of people that are just swearing up and down, hey, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Hey, this is 2008 is happening all over again. I'm willing to bet the people that are making those comments were probably eating Fruit Loops as a kid in their living room during 2008. You were not in the home buying market. I can almost guarantee that. And the other reality is this. I was in the business. I lived that shift that happened. And quite frankly, it is so different than what it is now that they're not even comparable. And let's back up here. If you're a homeowner, right? If you own like Charlie, you own a home, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you wanting do you want your home to be an asset bubble and crash?
No, but I also want to say when you say living in it, you mean you were working in it.
Dude, I was living in it, working in it.
Yeah.
I mean, guys, there is a drastic difference. And let me back up. You know, we're right here in Florida, right? During 2008, Florida, man, we were the epicenter of disaster during 2008. Now, there were 4 states that really got their teeth kicked in. No particular order, but you had California, you had Florida, you had Arizona, and you had Michigan. For whatever reason, all 4 of us were we were on the bad list for the basically agencies being Fannie and Freddie. I mean, there was one period where you couldn't even do a loan on condos in the state of Florida because there was so much disparity between condotels and condos that were going it was not even remotely close to what it is now. The other thing is this, and we're going to jump into these comments, I promise. But the other thing was this: in 2008, right, Charlie, if you were a homeowner in 2008, probably you were upside down in your home. Most homeowners were. And so you were faced with a decision when you go to sell that home, like, hey, do I sell my home right now for basically a short sale? Like I owe $500, it's worth $350. So I'm going back to the lender that I have a loan with, and I'm like, hey, will you forgive this $150 or at least bridge the gap? And you had to wait like 8 months to a year for that lender to make a decision, so that purchase timeline was drawn out, and the lender more than likely didn't work with you. Sometimes they did. It had to be really bad for them to do it. But if they didn't work with you as a homeowner, you kind of got ticked off and you're like, man, screw this. Here's the keys. I'm done. I'm out, right? Mm-hmm. And you would either live in that home while they filed foreclosure proceedings, which, by the way, the counties got backed up. So many foreclosures were taking place during that time. They got backed up. It took a really long time, to the tune of 8 to 14 months. So you're living in this house, basically no payment during that time, mm-hmm. right? Or you moved out and you went and rented a house because there was available inventory to do that, right? You downsized, got your payment in line, rented it, and the house goes into foreclosure. But in the meantime, a lot of those people that left and vacated those houses, 2 things happened. They either A, sold off the house piece by piece. Like, we're talking like ACs were ripped out, copper was taken, you had light fixtures stolen, sold, you had palm trees removed, appliances taken out, all sold for parts, because this individual that did that said, I need money, man. The economy's bad. We had a terrible job. The unemployment was awful. So we're working through those things. And I get it. I'm not blaming you, but that happened. Or the second thing was you left the house intact, and then squatters would come in, right? And this was like a 5-year cycle this took place. So you had a lot of things like that going on, but you didn't have equity is what I'm getting at. People who own homes now, for the most part, the vast majority have equity. I mean, I'm going to take a look at one of these comments here. You know, this Uncommon Sense 5876 user on here wrote, hey, man, 100% yes on your podcast. And more than 35% of homes are owned outright, no mortgage. And of the 65% of mortgages in the United States, 80% have a 4% or less rate handle on their mortgage and $200,000 in equity. Man, I couldn't agree with you more. Those are stats. You can't argue with stats right now. And so his other portion was so completely different than 2008 market. Yeah, I agree with you. You're understanding exactly what I'm saying. Personally, he wrote, we have a 2.85 rate. That's a lock-in effect, guys. That's exactly what it is. But he said that he has $270,000 in equity on a $500,000 hat. Hey, kudos, man. Congratulations. That's awesome. And hats off to you for being, taking advantage of the market at the right time. He also wrote, most of our neighbors are in the same position. Huh. I love this last part, or better, and there are 0 homes for sale within our neighborhood or even 5 streets of our neighborhood. That's a reality. Now, I know there are some sub pockets where there's homes for sale and inventory is increasing, right? If I go from 2 to 3, I increased, right, Charlie?
Yep.
So if I go from 3 to 4, I increased, right, Charlie?
Yep.
But if I go from 2 to 4, did I double?
Yep.
Yeah, but I went from 2 to 4, right? So the headline can be tricky here, but not only that, like it's increasing. I get that. It's not overwhelming. It's also not satisfying the current appetite in the market. And how do we measure demand? Well, you can look at it statistically through pending sales, but I can look at it from real-time applications and credit pools that are being done, right? Those numbers are up. You can also look at it every Wednesday morning when the Mortgage Bankers Association comes out with their index. They break it down by purchase applications and refinance applications. Now, that's a nationwide index, but you can look at it, and guess what? It's up, and it's up higher than it was in 2008. So they're different markets. They're completely different. But I go back to the people that want to see a pseudo crash, right? So I think it's only fair that we kind of look at the other side of the coin here. Here's a comment from Trucker Journal 3680. He says, "Hey, this is exactly like 2008, except worse." I'm going to read it first before I disagree with it here. How much inventory will be on the market when corporate rentals get dumped in a fire sale? And how many foreclosures will there be when people lose their jobs? Interest rates have been too low for too long, and our debt-based system can't handle even a 5% Fed rate. Now, I think there's a couple things to unpack here with that statement. One of the things I'll unpack is this. Hey, man, I appreciate the feedback. I always love it when people come to the table with what they think and how they feel. The first thing I'll say is this. I just broke down why this is not like 2008. Like, with all due respect, there are vast differences between 2008 and now. Number one is the supply-demand curve, and then number two is the equity position. I mean, $17 trillion in equity, you can't will that away. You can't say, hey, listen, this is just like 2008 or worse. You can't, because you say it, will that to happen. Like, that is not a bubble that's going to burst, because even to my producer, Charlie's point, he owns a home, he has equity. Like, Charlie's not over there going, hey, man, yeah, I hope I lose all my equity and I hope this thing's burst. Clearly, the people that are wanting this 2008 bubble are people that stand to gain from that. Like, dude, that's like me, Charlie. Like, back up here. So, hey, you're in equities market, some form, crypto or stock market, right?
Right.
Okay. So Charlie and I talk about this comment all the time. Like, dude, hey, I was not at the position in my life in college where I could invest a large amount of money in the stock market when it dipped down after 9/11. Now, that was an opportunity for a lot of people that had money. I couldn't do that, right? But do I deserve the right, or do I have the do I deserve the right to go, hey, man, it's because it's up at 40,000 now, it's going to bust, man, and I need it to bust, and it's going to bust because I want to, just because I'm wanting to get it at a lower rate, or I want to get in a lower price point?
Well, I mean, that's a whole.
But go for it. Finish your comment.
Okay, I mean, I just in the crypto stock, you've got the bears and the bulls.
Yeah.
And
same can be said for housing. Maybe you have bears and bulls,
I think
right?
it is. I think you've got bearish and bullish kind of thinking, and it depends on what you want. A lot of times is what that sentiment is.
Okay, so your desire is taking over reality.
In my opinion.
Okay,
so it
fair.
can.
You can, right? So here's the thing. Like, so some people are going, well, hey, that's stupid. You should always want to try to time it out and get a good deal. Why should I be mad at that? Okay, I'll agree with that. Maybe that was a bad analogy, but I will say this. I'm not going to get out for clickbait and talk about the crash of the stock market or the crash of a asset to benefit my own financial means, right? You maybe don't own a home right now, and that's okay. Like, it's going to be there, but doom and gloom isn't going to will it there, right? And so for the second part of this commentary here, corporate rentals get dumped in a fire sale. Like, that's something that I think the internet is buzzing on right now, right? I mean, guys, housing is not GameStop, period. Like, you can't, this isn't dumb money. Like, I mean, the reality is you're not going to, you can't unite to get the price to go down in this particular case or the price to go up in this particular case. It won't work like that. And corporate is not going to dump in a fire sale. And here's why. The return on rents right now are good. And they're continuing to rise. They're not continuing to go backwards. And we're even getting the rent rolls as they come in real time from the apartment rents as well as other lagging indicators to show that it's going up. It's not rising at a rapid rate, but it's steadily increasing. And those are rate of returns. They're not going to dump these, and most of those are owned free and clear. So, I mean, they have flexibility to move their rent roll at a much different capacity than someone that has a house leveraged. And it's an asset. It's growing in appreciation and also a monthly dividend. They're not just going to dump these. Like that's not going to happen here. Again, there's not enough rentals and there's not enough housing to suffice the appetite that's out there right now. So what's going to happen? Well, that's not going to happen. It's just not. But that's an internet phenomenon that's going on right now. And if you start Googling that stuff, you can get in this echo chamber. You know, I'm inside of our YouTube channel right now. I'm just looking, I'm like, just scrolling down the side. I mean, one of the very first things, there's this dude talking about a crash in Florida right now. It just shifted. And I'm like, then I go down, it's like when the housing crash will happen. And then next thing I know, I got housing market update, why home prices are so resilient and still growing. And then it literally like there's these echo chambers because we search some of this stuff. It's feeding it. But I'm looking at all of these views and I'm looking at all of these things on here. And I'm not saying they're not credible sources, but I'm saying what's the means behind doing that? The means behind what I'm doing is to try to provide facts, not fear. Facts, not fear, because facts over fear should win every time. Fear over facts is what is being used to drive clickbait. I prefer the facts over fear here because the facts show you that there are 17 trillion equity. And to the gentleman's point earlier, you know, a vast majority of the mortgages have a 4 handle on or below or are free and clear. So that's something to keep in mind when you talk about these fire sales, when you talk about this foreclosure wave that's coming. And to the next person's point, how many foreclosures will there be when people lose their jobs? Now, this is a great question. It's a question that deserves to be answered, Charlie, because let's take a look at it here. So in order for a foreclosure to happen, a couple of things have to take place. Number one, you stop making your mortgage payment. Now, you could argue if you don't have a job, you're not going to make your mortgage payment, right, Charlie? Be fair? Okay. So then the other thing is, for a foreclosure to take place, that's essentially forcing one of two things. The bank to take back over the property, or it's forcing the sale of the property. Does that make sense, Charlie? Mm-hmm. Okay. So in any way, you are relieving your ownership of the property back to the owner or the lien holder of the property. Now, sometimes that requires legal fees. You know, there's processes that take place, and that could eat up some of that equity. Mm-hmm. But there are equity positions at stake here, meaning that even if you lose your job and you bought that home, let's say before 2022 second quarter, you have an equity position. It behooves you to sell it in this market and put it at a reasonable price to where you're probably going to get multiple offers. It's probably going to get gobbled up. And guess what? You're going to get disposable income from that equity sale that may help you while you're without a job. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, these foreclosures, you're chasing a ghost here with that thought process. You're chasing the ghost of 08. Those people were upside down. Foreclosures were a different capacity than what they are now. Of course, you were like, man, here's the keys. I don't want the house anymore. I owe 150 more on it than it's worth. Well, flip that around. Okay, I'm not going to give you the keys because I have 150 in equity. I'm going to sell the home. So that's why a foreclosure process is not going to be a wave by any means like that. And so I think that even if you lose your job, you have the ability to sell your home and take the equity out of that home to help you in the position that you're in right now. Vastly different than 08. And interest rates have been low for too long. I could not agree with that comment more. That almost 11-year run of zero interest rates, it was not a good position, and it did. It put us in a bad position as an economy. But I don't think the comment here, our debt-based system can't handle even 5% Fed funds rate. I'm assuming here, and an assumption, we all know what happens, but I presume that this person is referring to the actual interest rate on the national debt that's being paid at the Fed funds rate. And I agree with that. That's one of the reasons why it's going to get lower than what it is right now. And so I did get a chance to kind of talk through this, and my favorite comment right after I refused that was, hey, do you honestly believe everything you're saying? Who do you work for? And I need to see your financial records. Yeah. That part was good. And that was Trinity Bull-Dwan, excuse me. You never mentioned the fact that so many single-family homes have never been removed from the market by institutional investors. A lot of people who will be shocked to learn that their own 401k investments and pension plans own single-family homes. So in saving for retirement, you kill the chance your children and grandchildren to buy a starter home.
That was the one I was trying to find just now.
Oh, was it? Yeah, it's there. It was coming in hot. So I think, that let me kind of back up as I clarified that, mutual funds are in 401ks, right? And mutual funds have mortgage-backed securities inside of mutual funds and have REITs, right? They don't own like a single family home, but they own products and mechanisms that have that in there. And so as those perform, so do your mutual funds, your 401ks, right? So the portion of that side that does that. But the other thing was, who do you work for? As I said, I don't work for any investment firm, or I don't work for any type of private investor or anything of that nature. I clearly have disclosed on here over and over again who I work for, and I'm in the banking industry. Been doing mortgage banking for over 22 years, and so I've lived through these cycles. I've seen them, and that's how I can attest and say those things that I've said there. But definitely not going to share my financials. I thought that was pretty funny. The other one I loved was this, man. Did you see the same person coming back in there? Hey, famous last words. Don't delete this bubble don't delete this when the bubble pops up, bro. Because you said we are not going to have a housing crash bubble, and I stand by that. Not only will we not delete this, we'll write it down, take a picture, and do a whole bunch of other stuff with it. It's not, we do not believe that is going to get worse. So I think that a couple of things on here. When you take a look,
we were just talking about this before we got started today. I was like, how's this stuff make you feel? And he's like, I love it. He's like, I love the feedback that people get.
Absolutely.
And, I love that Quinn's that kind of guy that, you don't have to agree, but this is great, an environment where we can talk about these things. I'm learning from just listening to you and these comments I'm reading. And so anyway.
Well, this podcast was only out for about 13 hours before the comments just started blowing up on here and the views took off. But it means we hit a nerve, either a good one or a bad one. We hit a nerve, right? And so what I've kind of devised is this. I'll wrap up with a few comments here, but before I do, I kind of want to talk about the state of the market and where I think this real estate market is. And I think getting comments like this from our users, and by the way, our channel is at What's Your One More with the number one, subscribe. Obviously, we do like the comments and we do read them. This episode proves that. But one of the things that we talk about on here is, hey, the people that want to buy a home and those that do own a home. So we talk about the people that are locked in and the people that want to buy and what could separate that. What we kind of understood today is that, in coming out of this, is it kind of let me create like a cycle of the market right now in my head, and I'll kind of walk through. Right now, there's a group of sellers, right? And Charlie, I'm going to use you again, right? They want to sell. They don't want to sell their home. Like, they're happy where they're living right now, but they would sell it if the price was right? If the price was, hey, listen, I used to be told everything at one time. Everything's for sale if it sits still long enough, right? So the thing is this: if you came to Charlie, let's just play a game here if we can. Like, I know you don't want to sell your home, but if someone offered you,
just make me think. I posted a boat on Facebook a year ago.
Yeah,
and it popped up the other day and it said, "Do you want to renew your listing?" I was like, "What listing?"
Yeah,
and so I renewed it. And today on the way here, somebody wrote me and asked if they could come see it tomorrow.
Well, okay, so here we go. So let's talk about it. So if you were going to sell your house,
I was going to repost it for almost half of what was on there a year ago,
and now they're ready to buy it.
And now someone just
So let's come full circle here. So you're going to sell your house, right? So I'm just using a number here, like, Charlie, would you sell your house for $200,000?
No.
Okay, would you sell it for $300,000?
No.
Would you sell it for $400,000?
No, but we're getting closer.
Would you sell it for $500,000?
Yeah.
Okay, we have a winner, right? This is my point.
Well, I live in a duplex.
Okay, but that's okay. But you live in a duplex, right, at the beach. But you don't need to sell your home. But I'm asking you, would you sell your home, right? And the answer was no. Yes, right. So we hit a number that was yes. Now, I don't know enough about Charlie's property to say what I'm going to say, but let's assume I do know, right? Charlie's property, traditionally speaking, wouldn't sell for $500,000, but you just heard live he would sell it for that. And we have a lot of sellers that are like that. And so we're going to call that price X, right? But Charlie doesn't need to sell it because he's got one of those interest rates that's 4% or less. He's locked in, right? He's got a healthy budget in there. Taxes are good. Payment's good. Insurance is good. And I'm very comfortable where I am. But I would get uncomfortable for $500,000, right? So then we've got a buyer that's looking to buy a property like this, but they don't want to pay $500,000 right now. And this is a buyer that has been angry. Some of you online might be that buyer, but it's angry. It's an angry buyer, Charlie, because they feel left out. And they're angry because they've been fighting the battle to try to get a home, but they haven't been able to get one. Whether it's a multiple offer situation, they've missed out, or the price hasn't been right, the affordability's out there, but they've missed out. And because they've missed out, they've seen the home prices go up. And that has made them more angry, right? So Charlie's over here saying $500,000. Buyer's getting angry. Buyer wants to buy that home, but doesn't want to pay $500,000. And so here's a situation we have where we have two false expectations. We have a seller that's like, I don't need to sell the property. I mean, I'll sell it. I don't need to sell it. And then you've got a buyer going, well, I don't want to pay it for that. right? I don't want to buy that for that. But somehow they come together on a contract for that price point. And the buyer is under the notion that maybe I can negotiate the price down after I get in a contract because of a home inspection situation, right? And that typically turns into where a contract falls out, right? It just cancels. And, that's a situation that happens. I mean, in Jacksonville, we have one of the highest rates of that because that's what's happening. That's an undesirable property, unfortunately. It's undesirable because it's outpriced, false expectations are combining, and it's not working out. And then we have, in Florida, we have all these condos, and there's a huge condo surge happening right now because of the Miami rule. We did a whole podcast on that. I'm not going to get into it. But the HOA dues are being increased, therefore applying more price pressure and applying more monthly pressure. And a lot of fixed income people are being affected by that, and they're having to get rid of those properties. Therefore, while we're seeing so many condos, which are also now considered potentially undesirable because the HOA dues are so high. And then we have this set of properties that I consider to be desirable. And these are properties that are listed right, And in that example with Charlie, maybe he lists that home at $425, right? Maybe $425 he listed. Well, now this is like angry buyers collide and unite on that property, right? They're excited. That's in the price wheelhouse. It's a good number. They all want that property. But we're talking that's 10 to 15 multiple offers, and the price has gone up from $425. It's probably closer to $450, $460 at this point. It has driven the price up. Those properties are moving, and they are selling quickly. But that's not the bulk of the market. Priced right properties are not the bulk of the market. Why? Because of that lock-in effect. People don't need to sell their property. And there's a different time when people needed to sell their property. They needed that money. They needed to get out of that. That isn't the case right now because they're sitting on so much equity. They're like, I don't need to sell this. I don't need to. Like, I'm comfortable where I am. But if you're going to make me feel uncomfortable, it's got to be at this price point. Mm-hmm. And that is a situation that we have right now. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating for buyers. It's frustrating for real estate agents. It's frustrating for mortgage lenders. It's frustrating because that's a process that we're in right now. So what cures that frustration? Well, typically what would happen when rates got as high as they were, we should see the price of the product, in this case, the house, it should have come down. That's what should have happened. And the demand should have subsided. But it didn't because we don't have enough inventory. Why? Because we have too much money chasing too few of goods in this case. That's what's happening. And so the price has continued to go up and the demand hasn't been fulfilled and it's not subsiding. And because of that, that is why those homes haven't retreated. Now, the only way it's going to retreat, rates go down, that's going to retreat. It's going to retreat because the demand will start to be subsided and filled. New inventory in the form of new homes, new builds make their way to the market to provide additional inventory. That will help. That's going to take time, though. That's not going to be corrected overnight. The rate drop will take time, and so will the backfilling of new housing inventory. In the meantime, what you will find is this. When rates do make their first way down, and I don't know when that's going to be, right? But when they happen, there's going to be this 12-month cycle, and it could be either mid-25, early 25, all of 25, 25, 26. You get the point. There's going to be a 12-month cycle. And inside that 12-month cycle, it is going to be a game of musical chairs amongst buyers and sellers. Charlie lists his home. He gets a price he's very excited about. Charlie takes that equity and buys another home. The lister of that home now has to go buy another home, sells their home back. You get the point. It's going to be musical cycle of chairs during that time. And for those that don't want to sell, that have that equity position, Charlie, they're going to refinance and they're going to get that cash and put it on the sidelines because the last 2 years have taught them cash is king. And the last 2 years have taught them being uncomfortable is not good. But if I could have got to my equity, I'd have been a lot more comfortable. But I couldn't get to that equity at 7 and 8%. But if I can get to that equity at a lower rate, oh boy, I'm going to get it out and I'm going to put it on the sidelines and I'm going to hold it because I don't want to go through this again. And there's going to be a massive wave of a lot of transactions taking place. It's going to, and to the point, I think it'll rival a COVID number in the form of volume. It might not do it in the form of transactions, but it will do it in the form of volume because the price points have gone up so much. And so there's this illusion, if you may, that this bubble is going to burst because it's so much like 2008. Now, the only thing I've seen in these commentaries, and the only thing I've seen in some of these videos that are on here that I have watched, and I'd rather poke my eyes out than watch them again, is that literally the result is, hey, it's just like 2008. We're on margin thin margins. And I'm like, what in the hell does margin thin? What does margin thin margins mean? I would love to know what that. I asked that person what that meant. And they couldn't tell me. And then I asked for everyone's data set that said there's a 30 to 50% correction coming. I'm like, hey, you know what? That's something we should consider on the other side. Please show me your data set. Yeah. Show me where you're getting that from. crickets. Crickets. I keep going back and checking. It's crickets. And then the only response was, it will be much higher than 30%. Oh, okay. Again, where's that data set coming from?
Right.
Because there is no data set. It is a YouTube clickbait, IG clickbait.
Yeah, they heard it from some
They heard
dude.
it from someone that has that you have an assumption. And
That's what I wanted to ask you. The Reventure dude, whatever his name is, but he's saying that people like, you know, California, New York, all these people that are moving here, they can't afford to move here now. That's what he said.
They can't afford to move to California.
No, they can't. From there, they can't afford to move to Florida now because of our prices.
Well, I mean, I bet he lives in California. I bet he lives in California. He doesn't want people leaving the state, right? Listen, at the end of the day, there are opportunities. Most people don't want to listen to them because it's easier to say it's a bubble.
Yeah.
It's easier to say, hey, listen, it's going to inflate. And I don't think that it doesn't have any weight or credibility or data sets. I don't understand that. And so I'm still trying to figure out where all of this come from and where it's stirring up. And all I can gather from asking people over and over again, you know, where is it coming from? Like someone was relating real estate to the tulips in Holland in 1673. Are you familiar with this story, by the way?
Well, I don't think I am.
Okay, so the tulips in Holland is a story that a lot of people antiquate Bitcoin to, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're an anti-Bitcoin person, you kind of use this as like a theology as to why Bit or crypto is not going to work, right? So the premise of the story is this, is that tulips were not normal, right? But they were discovered in Holland. And a person, man or woman, I don't recall how the story goes, I think it was a man, it starts picking these tulips and bringing them. And brings them in a scarce format, right? And they were paid for in crazy money. People are like, oh my God, I've never seen this before. Oh my gosh, I got to have this. And they start paying ridiculous money for tulips. And so the guy keeps going back. Well, then all of a sudden, he's not the only person with the tulips. Mm-hmm. And so more tulips show up. And it only took a matter of time before there were so many tulips that they were like pennies.
Right.
They're no longer being paid for. But when they first came to the scene, the idea of scarcity, the idea of something new, the idea of something that's never been seen before caused people with money to pay a higher value. Now, I don't think that's the case for housing. Like housing people have seen before. Housing is not a new thing. I mean, different versions of the house could be, how you build it, what you put on it, the color, the paint. But the reality of a shelter, how a roof over your head has been a story of time for quite some time. So I don't think that's the case here. But I do appreciate the analogy. I just don't think it's the case by any sense of the means. So, but the tulip theory is something I have heard about over and over again when it comes to crypto market. I'm not saying that's what I subscribe to. I just have heard it used in that manner many a time. And I think the book was called The Greater Fool Theory is what it's called. But to me, that's not a real estate situation. And I will say this about real estate. It's the only asset that you can buy that you can put a down payment that's limited down to. And then you could turn around and receive a rise in the asset as well as a substantial dividend on a monthly basis at such a low down payment. For example, stocks rise in price and stocks have dividends. If you buy $50,000 worth of a stock, your dividend's not going to yield $200 to $300 a month in most cases, right? It's just not going to. And it may not rise at 10% of the value because you're only going to receive 10% of the money you put in. Does that make sense? You buy a stock for 50%, it goes up 10%, you made $5,000. Make sense, Charlie? Mm-hmm. But if you buy a house for $500,000 and you put $50,000 down and it goes up 10% in 1 year, you effectively doubled your money. That's a 100% rate of return, right? So there's a big difference in how the stock works. Plus, if you end up renting that, now you got a dividend coming in per month. It's a big difference in how that works, right? That real estate, and investors understand that. That's why a lot of people are buying homes right now. A lot of investors are. But getting back to, I realize that we struck a chord with this, and I appreciate all the feedback in the comments. I haven't read all of them because we got quite a few comments on there. But I will say this. There's $17 trillion in equity out there. And an asset bubble cannot be willed. You can say as many times as you want. It doesn't mean it's going to happen until the supply starts to outweigh the demand. And we talked about how that has to happen. New homes have to come to market. Like new builds have to happen. And then people that are locked in have to unlock that and have a desire, a need, and a want to unlock to get out of that, to start playing the musical chairs concept, to start buying and selling homes. You're not going to see those prices subside at the rate in which you're looking for. And if the 8% rate didn't do it, the 6.75, 7% damn sure isn't going to do it. So keep that in mind. Guys, if you like what you're hearing, please share this podcast. Please 5-star review it. Check us out on our YouTube channel at What You Want More. Obviously, we love the comments. Continue them coming. We do appreciate it. Stay tuned for the details on the auto payment. We set stage for that in the month of August. Very excited that we do have a sponsor. Details to come over the next couple of weeks. Super fired up about that. We will tell you the ways that you can get into that drawing, and I hope it's you. I hope we get a chance to bring you on the show, make that car payment for you in the month of August. Till then, guys, have a great week. It is Monday, and I hope everyone had a great Father's Day. We'll see you at the next episode of What You Want More.
I got one more shot, I'm gonna make it. One more chance, I'm gonna take it. I meant it when I said it, now it's time for me to do it. I got one life to live, so I put my all into it.